I love deviled eggs, and these are some of the most delicious and certainly the most Instagrammable deviled eggs ever. This recipe comes courtesy of Chef Brian Fitzgerald at Lazy Susan. It's an amazing mid-century modern-themed tapas bar here in beautiful Macon, Georgia. And no artificial food coloring is involved in this dish.
It's a new twist on a Southern classic. Usually it's like an Easter special or something. They're using pickled beets.
And while Brian's menu calls this dish The Beet Goes On, it actually is not made with beets, which is good for me because beets unfortunately turn my stomach. Any deviled egg starts with some perfectly hard-boiled eggs. Brian brings a big pot of water to a boil with some salt and vinegar in it.
Vinegar kind of helps break down the shell a little bit. All the eggs straight into the boiling water, preferably all at the same time as much as possible, just to get an even cook on all the eggs.
And after precisely 14 minutes of cooking, he pulls them straight out into ice water. Once they're cool, you can peel them, halve them, scoop out the yolks, and save those for later.
Now, I always like to rinse off any residual yolk that's left in there. That'll help with the evenness of the dye in the end.
And speaking of the dye, here it is, a whole head of purple cabbage. Chop it, throw it in some salted boiling water for 5 minutes, then drain. Brian is reserving the cooking water. You don't have to do that, but you'll see why he does it. Drained cabbage goes into an ice water bath. If you didn't shock it like this,
it would lose some of its brightness and its color.
Most of that ice should melt after a few minutes. If there's any ice left in there after you drain again, pull it out. You're going to puree this and the ice would water it down.
So this is our industrial grade food processor called RoboCoupe. If you don't have one of these at home, you can always use either a Ninja or any type of blender that you have available.
In goes a 1/4 cup of white sugar, a tablespoon of salt, and a 1/3 of a cup of apple cider vinegar.
And we let her rip.
The resulting puree needs to be thick but liquid enough that it can fully and evenly coat the egg whites. Every cabbage will be different. If it looks like it needs liquid, you can throw in some water, ideally that reserved cooking liquid. The main reason Brian reserves that liquid, though, is because he'll actually reuse this puree to dye several batches of eggs for the restaurant. And
we reserve some of the blanching liquid to kind of bring the color back out after the first or second time using it.
Yeah, you're probably not going to do that at home, which is why you probably don't need to bother reserving the cooking water. Now, you can see that he's just layering the eggs in the puree.
Face up into the stain so that when we layer more on top of it, they can fall in and fill in all the cracks.
And just let that sit in the fridge overnight. There's one other pickling step to be done the night before we eat.
So what we have here is brown sugar, apple cider vinegar, and dried mustard seeds.
Pickled mustard seeds are my new favorite thing in life. He's throwing a cup of those seeds into enough cold water to cover, and then he'll just bring them to a boil.
Now these are going to triple in size as they hydrate.
Yeah, this is probably going to make more than you'd need for a couple dozen eggs, but put these on sandwiches. While they're coming to a boil, mix together 3/4 of a cup of apple cider vinegar, a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and a 1/4 cup of warm water to help the sugar dissolve. No salt.
Mustard seeds are pretty salty enough as it is.
And when they boil, you can drain them off. Notice how Brian is using a spatula to kind of nudge out any remaining water, and then in the pickling liquid it goes. Mustard seeds have always been a classic flavoring when pickling other things, but here in the American South, they had an epiphany.
I think they would end up getting to the bottom of a jar of pickles, having the mustard seeds and tasting them and being like, oh wow, that's a condiment in and of itself.
If you're skeptical, just wait until these sit in the fridge overnight. Meanwhile, I can show you one of the funniest things I have seen in some time. Lazy Susan here is a brand new restaurant, and so a few days ago, the Macon-Bibb County Commission had to discuss the matter of their liquor license. That's the mayor of Macon, Robert Rickert, there.
The next is a Lazy Susan Tapas Bar. Can I get a motion and a second?
I have a question, Billings. You mentioned the tapas bar. Can you explain that?
Yes, sir. As I understand it, a tapas bar, T-A-P-A-S, tapas, is a small plate. So it's kind of like appetizers and things like that. But this is not a topless bar, it's a tapas bar.
I think we were hearing it as topless.
Oh, I'm trying to do the best I can. It's a tapas, it's a small plate bar.
Top.
Can I get a motion and a second on those two license applications?
I hope that brightened your day as it did mine. Thanks to my dear friend, reporter Liz Fabian, who flagged that golden nugget for me. Okay, it's the next day, and check out these beautiful pickled mustard seeds. They call it poor man's caviar. I am not poor, and I would take these over real caviar any day. There's one other condiment to prep, and it's very optional. Brian calls it prosciutto salt. He's got like a dozen thin slices of prosciutto there on a rack.
Stuck it in the oven at 250 degrees for about 2 hours.
That's just like 120 C, more of a dehydration step than a cooking step. After it's dried and cooled, he puts it into a spice grinder or a coffee grinder type thing and blitzes it into a powder.
I'm gonna lay it out on some paper towels just to dry out any residual oils or moisture left in there.
Now, if you wanted to keep this meatless, you could easily replace this with the more traditional paprika, or Brian recommends grinding some pink peppercorns. Now we can exhume the eggs, wash them off, and there you go. Devotees will know why this dish caught my attention. But does that egg now taste like cabbage?
The pickling of the cabbage kind of comes through in the egg a little bit, gives it a little bit firmer of a texture, but no, I wouldn't say it tastes like cabbage much at all.
Now for the filling, we've got the reserved egg yolks and
Duke's mayonnaise, because we are in the South.
Indeed, it must be done. Now, people normally just mash up the egg yolks, however, but Brian here is passing them through a sieve. This just makes sure that he gets a really even consistency at the end, no big lumps of yolk.
So for right now, I'm using just enough Duke's mayonnaise to kind of wet it a little bit to start, and I can add more as I go.
Similar quantity of Creole mustard goes in. You could use any mustard. Salt and pepper, and as he stirs this up, I don't know about you, but my instincts are saying that's too dry. No, it's not. It is perfect.
You don't want it to be runny, because even if it's a little bit hot out or if it just sets for a little while, the moisture is kind of going to absorb more and then it'll flatten out. It won't retain its appearance.
Flavor-wise, this is the kind of thing that you can just taste and then add more salt or whatever else it needs until you like it. Remember, it needs to be strong enough to flavor both itself and the white underneath it. Time to assemble. You can see he's putting in the filling with a piping bag. You could obviously just spoon it in. You can see what he means, though, about it needing to be firm to hold its shape and not just spill out. Here comes those exquisite pickled mustard seeds. Oh, a hearty spoonful on each egg. A dusting of that powdered prosciutto on top of each one. Again, paprika or pink pepper would be awesome instead.
We're going to garnish it with red vein sorrel.
Just about any leaf could work for pretty here, but boy, those are real pretty. Brian plates that on some salad greens, mostly for friction. Makes them less likely to slide off the plate in transit to the customer, and that is just outrageous. The egg is creamy and sweet. The mustard seeds pop between your teeth, just like caviar, they burst. That is a great classic elevated to something really fine and fun. Hey, real quick, as I record this, Lazy Susan is like nearly every other restaurant in the whole world in that it is ramping down due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a nightmare for any restaurant, but especially for these poor folks who just got started. I implore you to do whatever you can to support your local restaurants in this time. If they're offering takeout food, take it. The experts are saying takeout food poses a minimal risk compared to anything else you're probably eating right now. There's some articles about that in the description. And when the experts give us the all clear, please go back to your local restaurants. If you're in my part of the world, please go to Lazy Susan. Look at these lacto-fermented pickles Brian has going. These are for the summer. Come eat them when it's safe. In the meantime, give these eggs a shot at home. I'm gonna.